and maybe just this essence that we have where we feel we need to be somewhere else, that is kind of like that hauntedness, that to
Okay.
take away that, right, and to just live with purpose and say, where I am is where I am, and where I'm going to be is where I'm going to be. I'm doing my work, I'm being of service in this life, I'm helping others, and I'm fulfilling some of my wishes and dreams and hopes that I have.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. It's Audley Stevenson back for another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. You've got to lock to the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to follow us on our social media channels. You can head over to Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook and look up the Audacious Pod. That's our handle. And of course, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, then you know all you got to do is tap that bell down below, ding, 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 and you're immediately connected to all great things audacious related. Now, we've got Martin Theis joining us on this edition of the Audacious Living Podcast, and it is an absolute pleasure to hear him speak. He's a spiritual teacher who helps individuals find well-being and balance and inner peace on that path or journey of life that we all have to take. The conversation we had was enlightening, to say the least, and I'm absolutely certain that you'll walk away with something and appreciate what he has to share. So now that we've got the table set, I'm going to turn it over to Martin and our conversation, again, right here on the Audacious Living Podcast. Enjoy. Hey, Martin, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. It's so awesome of you to take the time and do this. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you for being here with me and for inviting me. It's really a great pleasure. Aloha.
Yeah, yes, aloha. Again, you're of Hawaiian. I was gonna say Hawaiian descent, but that's part of one of the places that you live as a world traveler. So aloha back to you.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little about just your background a little bit, but certainly, again, when we look at the focus of this podcast, we very much are encouraging individuals to live that bold, audacious life that we're intended to, we're supposed to, and step into our purpose and be the individual that we're supposed to be. And you, through your work, very much as a coach, are very much in line with that and helping people get to that better place. And so I think it's a great, the synergy is great that you're here. And perhaps as a starting point, just so people understand a little about you and the work that you do, I wonder if you can explain some of the work that you do and how you help people get to where they need to be.
You know, the funny thing is, when you just say that, I feel I almost want to interrupt in saying that we are already where we need to be, right? We oftentimes think we need to get to other places, other circumstances, whatever that is. And so I feel my greatest work is in helping people to realize that there's actually nothing that we need to do, right? I know this conflicts a little bit with your message, but also not. In a way, it is just that this driven, let's say, not even driven, maybe just this essence that we have where we feel we need to be somewhere else, that is kind of like that hauntedness, that to
Okay.
take away that, right, and to just live with purpose and say, where I am is where I am, and where I'm going to be is where I'm going to be. I'm doing my work, I'm being of service in this life, I'm helping others, and I'm fulfilling some of my wishes and dreams and hopes that I have, but to not cling to those in that
Right.
essence. Yeah. So that is my work. I have created a program that is founded, or kind of like where the basis of that program is through some shamanic journeys. So we journey internally. It's kind of like an inner reflection or an inner discovery process. And I'm just helping my clients, all the people who come to me, to work with these ancient teachings to really find out more about themselves, what their inner motivation is, what their needs are, and to bring this balance and inner peace into this life
Right.
experience.
Yeah. You use the word excuse me, the word journey, and I think very much it is a journey. So we go back to the initial point about where we are, where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I'd say where we are in this journey is where we're supposed to be, and
Yeah.
it is a progression. It doesn't stop, and sometimes we will find ourselves in maybe painful or dark places, and we get stagnant and we don't move because we're dealing with whatever pain that we're going through. But we're meant to continue on. And I guess there's a certain level of, I'll use the word acceptance, if you will, acceptance of what's happened, but then the journey still continues. I wonder if you sort of could comment on that, because although you thought maybe it's different by initial message, I think we're in line with each other very much so.
Absolutely. And I mean, when we look at it from a certain point of view, it is oftentimes those biggest challenges, those trials that we overcome are our greatest strength, or something that really motivates us, lets us grow, lets us become that person that we need to be, that you mentioned, right? To grow, and that the journey never ends is also true. It's just like this continuation of, I mean, I don't know how much you are into the spiritual or esoteric perspectives of it, but to just say we as consciousness continually grow and evolve and experience consciousness as itself, so it is never ending, right? And that's maybe a little bit far away, but just to say that that if we experience life where it is, then no day is exactly the same. No person is on each given day the same person. So if we stay open to this process, it's always just like a not evaluation, but just a rediscovery of something new every day.
So much of that is first of all an awareness of what's happening around us. So we have to certainly have a higher awareness, and but also perspectives help with that, doesn't it, Martin? Be able to see different perspectives to elevate our awareness.
Yeah, definitely so. I mean, if I'm able to incorporate different perspectives and different points of view, then just as a result, I am not limited in this one way of perceiving things, right? So I can look at certain angles, and I find that tolerance is really built on what you're just saying, that if I'm able to see, maybe I'm not agreeing with, if it's a conflict situation, maybe I'm not agreeing with that person, what they're saying, or their political views, or maybe even something that is almost harmful, then, but to at least be able to say, well, from the perspective of this person, this is making sense, this is how their reality is created, and I accept that. I don't have to accept harmful behavior in the world, but I can say this person is just who they are right now, and I can do whatever it needs to be done in order to bring this situation at least to some kind of meeting place.
Yes. It's funny, you look out in the world, and oftentimes, Martin, you'll see two people, and let's say they're engaged in an argument, let's say hypothetically, and the point is to prove that other person is wrong, as opposed to what you're suggesting, the acceptance, right? Okay, that's where they are, and move forward, and then the piece, if you take it a step further, what oftentimes happens is, okay, because you don't agree with me, and you don't see it my way, I vilify you, and you're a bad person. Right. And all I did was a different perspective, right?
Yeah. And like you say, it's so easily done. And I catch myself all the time. It's not that I'm talking from the high horse here. It's really, I notice when I judge people or judge situations. And so there's more than enough room for myself to be better at that, rather than just looking at other people, how other people need to be. You need to be more understanding. You need to, that's the best sentence, actually. You need to accept,
because you've got the issue, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny, but I again, the function of being a human, right? And we all have judgments, but I think the thing that we could do a better job at collectively is exercising more grace towards another person. And I think if we can do that and grace and extend compassion and being able to be more open minded to viewpoints and perspectives,
Yeah,
I think we can go, we can get collectively for so much further ahead. We really can.
absolutely. And maybe just to bring this home, I was in a sauna on Saturday, and I was sitting there, and then somebody was making a really derogatory uh, comment on a woman who came in. The sauna was full, and she
Okay.
was really, really heavily overweight, and so he was really speaking down on her, and as a human being, very, very negative. And I was so mad, you know. And then at some point, I just caught myself and said, "Well, this is how this person sees it. There's no need to judge him for being judgmental towards somebody else. I can just give kind of like what you mentioned, that aspect of grace, or just maybe forgiveness, you know, forgiveness for myself that I judged in the moment. Somebody
Yeah.
else judged another person, I judged him. And to not react and fall into that same pattern, but to say, well, this is just a person who's struggling with
Yeah.
stuff, who's triggered by certain things. Let it slide, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think in that example, our emotions drive us so much
Yeah,
sometimes, and so I know for me, like I've got this really strong sense of right and wrong, and when I see wrong being committed, I just get really emotional about it, and
yeah,
and so when we talk about the grace and giving the benefit of the doubt, it's really really a hard thing to do.
it is. It is. And
Yeah.
and I mean, I think the hard part is really also in not suppressing that. I don't know how to really put words to this, but there is certain elements where I notice I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, in
Okay.
quotation marks,
Okay.
just like judging someone, and then to suppress that. I'm not allowed, I shouldn't be like that, I'm not allowed to be like that. But to really feel, okay, I did that, have some self-compassion, and then move
Right.
on, rather than
Right.
to trying to put it under the rug, if that makes any
No,
sense.
it totally makes sense. It's because again, I'll use the rug as an example. You slide some on the rug and you got this bump, right? And then
Yeah,
you slide more, and it gets bigger.
yeah,
So the problem is still is there. It's just covered up, right? It's all you're
yeah,
doing. You're not addressing or dealing with it. And so, and I think that is a nice sort of segue or tie into your work as a spiritual coach, and work with individuals to deal with what they have with under the rug and be able to address that. How did you maybe sort of talk about the work you do, and you talk about the shamanic journey that you help people understand? I wonder if you sort of incorporate that and give that to our audience to understand your work a bit more.
okay. Can you give me a little a different question, or paraphrase that question that you have?
So 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 I find that the work that you're doing in helping people address the emotional things that they're covering up,
Yeah,
because those are things that are holding us back, that often hold individuals back from living that audacious life that we talk about.
yeah.
And so I guess the question is, how do you do that with individuals, and how do you get them to uncover what's under the rug?
Okay, so I would say that I've never really been asked this question in this way, so it's really interesting. Thank you for that.
Okay.
I think what we do when we start out on this journey
Mhm.
is we look at the major roadblock, like
Okay.
really the one thing where I say I'm really struggling with this emotionally. Like, this is something. Why am I here actually? Why am I
Mm.
looking for someone to coach me through something? What is the incident that brought me here, and what is emotionally connected to that? That
Mhm.
is the major roadblock. And then on the other hand, we look at, what is my goal, what is my vision, how do I see myself, in which position, and where, you get the picture. My dream, basically, what is it I want to bring into this world?
Right. Okay.
And so the reason why we are able to then go through the journey that we are, and why the clients and the people who come on this journey with me are going under the rug, is because they see and they feel that the goal is actually something that is graspable, is something that is reachable, if I go under the rug and take these things and look at them and dissolve whatever is not true to me or whatever it is. So there is a high intrinsic motivation to really have this conversation, and it is not as bad as we might think, because we say there's all this suppressed energy. But if we look at an onion or something, where we peel away these layers really gently and slowly through those journeys, then we have an inner dialogue, and we see how certain patterns don't serve us anymore, and we are much more willing to let them go. So this is kind of like that, a more elaborate answer to your question of how that process and why people would be doing that.
I very much love the analogy of the onion and peeling the layers. I think that provides an excellent picture. But you use the word gently, and I think that's really important, because as we go through these explorations into ourselves, that we'll undoubtedly uncover some stuff. And oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, the things that we uncover go as far back to our childhood, and things that either happened to us or happened in some capacity that we were there or involved, and they stayed with us. As you said, these behaviors stay with us, don't serve us, and we take them into our adult world, and that's where all the chaos happens, and we don't know how we got there.
Absolutely. And you know, I feel like that gentleness, and also the onion layer, is a perfect image for it never ends, really. If we look at, there's still, even if we have peeled away all those layers at an onion, there's still one more layer, and it just keeps on going, where we're going back to what we talked about. This journey is just ongoing, and we're not, I think, oftentimes in the spiritual community and in the context of this awakening process, we still subconsciously have this image of enlightenment, of a goal, of something where we're done. And so, because there's nothing to do anyways, we can just devote our time to what we're doing. And so I'm peeling this onion, let's say, gently, slowly, and just whatever helps me be more present, be more loving, and graceful, as you mentioned before. Live audaciously.
Yes. No, I love it. Again, that image is the onion is just, you use a perfect analogy, Martin. You really did. You really did, because it speaks volumes in terms of the layers that exist. As individuals, we're complex. We're not just what you see on the surface. There's more to us. And in some instances, we know there's some individuals that they're very in tune with who they are beyond the surface, and there's others that are still learning what that is.
Yeah.
One isn't better than the other, because they're on their own individual journey, as we talked about the journey in the very beginning. Yeah. And so as long as we bear that in mind, and that we continue on our path, and we do what we're intended to do, and we give grace to ourselves as well as extend to others, I think we can, that will help aid our journey to make it more, the word bountiful comes to mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The part of that is discovering inner peace. And I guess depending on what you uncover, that might be a bit more challenging to find that peace. I wanted to sort of talk about the process of how one gets to the place of inner peace.
I would say that inner peace, similar to happiness, is something that is not graspable and unreachable in a sense. If we want to get it, if we want to catch it, or if we want to kind of like pursue it, then it's almost as if it's fleeting away in the moment we decide we almost have it, and then it's just gone again.
Right.
But Dr. Wayne Dyer talked about this beautiful story about an alley cat meeting a cat that went to cat grad school or something, and the cat learned in school how to achieve happiness. And I have to cut this story short. The end of the story is that the knowing is you can find happiness in the end of the tail, and that if you catch your tail, kind of like that's what the the school cat thinks you have happiness. That would be what I said, just like it's always fleeting away. If you look at cats that try to catch their tails, it's always slipping away. And
Right.
so the alley cat just answers and says, yeah, well, I didn't go to a fancy grad school for cats. I just lived in the streets here. But I realized that happiness does exist in the back of a hotel, and it will always, but I realize it will always follow me no matter where I go. So the alley cat didn't really try to catch happiness in the tail. It just knew it was there and trusted that it followed him wherever it went. So that, and I would use that metaphor for inner peace similarly, because I think we can accept to a certain extent, or we can accept our life circumstances and people, relationships and everything, but at some point it just comes down to being at peace with what is. And it is not a process of, it is a process of getting there, but the process is realizing that I can connect with this inner peace at any moment. If the stories in my head, if I'm able to, in the beginning, contain the stories in my head, and at some point realize how I can stop the narrative in my head at a certain point, and to decide to let it drop. I don't need to tell myself what makes me miserable. I know how it leads to depression when I start off here, and if I go down that road, I know where it's going to end. So I'm just not going there.
Yes.
Yeah.
For some, they've been on that road already, so they know, right? It's like,
yeah.
So let's take a different path, if you will, right?
Yeah.
I think when I ask about the inner peace, because when I think about it, to me, it just feels like, I think that it's an ongoing, it's not like climbing to the top of a mountain and you go, okay, I'm at the mountain, I'm at the top. When I think about inner peace and even happiness, it's something that you're always working towards, always attaining. And I don't know if you ever, I guess the way I'm thinking about, are you ever there? If that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And no, I'm not. Like, the bigger the emotional triggers get, the less there I am. And I would say the work that I've done over the years has helped me to recover more quickly, and to be that, let the amplitudes of low not get as deep, so it's not a excruciatingly long process of coming back to presence and to being more there. But it does happen because whatever I'm not living a Buddhist enlightened way where I'm just walking smiling every day, so I think it would be unfair to say. But it's also realizing that this is part of life, this is part of the life experience, that when we cling to wanting to always be high, or to wanting to be always peaceful, always be happy, that is when we introduce suffering and misery into our lives. When we accept, okay, today is a shitty day, those days are also part of the deal, then it's already easier to accept that, and to not fight, but I need to be high, I need to be better, I need to be peaceful. In the moment where we cling to that aspiration or that expectation, then we really introduce suffering into our lives.
As you're talking about how we introduce suffering in our lives, I kind of laugh because it just seems so ironic. Like, you're chasing happiness, but you end up with suffering at the end because of this internal chase. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's counterproductive, quite frankly, Martin. It truly is. Like, what we're wanting to achieve and what we end up with, and they're two polar opposites as I see it.
Yeah, and it's it's just like you said, it's sad in one way, and we should know better, and many people know better. Some people don't know, and that is also part of the process of finding out. And even those who know better, like me, in the instance that I know what would need to be done, sometimes my hands are bound. I know I would benefit from going out more into the woods if I had if I set today, for example, I sat
Right.
on my computer all day. It's 8:25 p.m. I've not left the house because I've been on this machine all day, and I know
Right.
I would benefit from going into the woods, which are literally 2 minutes down the road, so
Right.
it's not even I would have to step into a car, but sometimes we just don't do it even though we know better.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, hey, I'm funny. I've been in front of my machine all day as well too, and the gym's around the corner, and I could easily go and be there for an hour or so. But it's the
Yeah,
same kind of my idea where we know better, but and that's why I always say that there's a clear difference between knowing and doing, right?
yeah,
And the doing requires a lot more work. The knowing, sure, we know it, but you still gotta, you still have to do to make it happen. And so I think that's where it can be a challenge for a lot of people, because sometimes at doing there's other obstacles. We talked about sort of childhood issues that might come up. We haven't even touched on the fear and how that can paralyze us in our lives. And actually, let's kind of talk about fear a little bit, Martin.
yeah.
Seems like a nice transition into the things that are holding us back. There's different types of fears, right? There's some that are our own. There are some that come from other people. There's some that maybe the fear of the unknown. Is there a sort of general maybe rule of thumb of how we try to deal or address with fear generally?
I would say that maybe this is presumptuous in a sense to say I know what it is, but just from my experience, I would say fear, what we can say about all those types of fears is that we have a tendency to avoid it because it is very, very unpleasant, and it is a spectrum, depending, like panic being one end of the spectrum and a minor kind of like agitation or something on the other. But our tendency is to move away from that. That
Right.
is the thing where I would say we can combine that onto that, and that if we are able to be with that fear, to just allow that in, and this sounds easier than it's actually done,
Right.
just out of
It usually is, isn't it? It usually is,
yeah.
isn't it?
And sometimes we're not even aware of that fear being in
Very
the
good point.
background. So how should I know that my behavior is currently heavily influenced by some kind of major fear that is operating in the background? So I would say that really being if I realize I'm afraid, then to just feel that fear existence, if it whatever kind of fear that is, right? We all experience this emotion similarly, I would say, even though the triggers and the projections into the world are different. But
Right.
when I'm afraid for my life and that I'm not going to make it in some way or the other, then that is really what did you paralyzing, I think,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That is when we really are paralyzed. And so in order to really, I think I read somewhere that if we would be able to go through that fear, that is that let's say that opponent, the one fear that we have that is our major opponent if it's not an opponent, but if we imagine that this external thing, if we are able to walk through this, then on the other side of that would be all our dreams, all our things that we wish for, right? So if we are able to surrender and say, well, I'm afraid and I'm still getting up, I'm still going towards what is my dream because it is worth it to me. If that is behind that fear, then I am able to just really be courageous and say, okay, I move forward because this is so important to me that I will stop at nothing. I don't want to die knowing I didn't do it all in order to bring this about.
That's right. No, I hear you. I hear loud and clear. I think when I think about fear, sometimes the idea of, and I know I don't know who said it, but it's the idea concept is, feel the fear and face it anyways, right?
Yeah.
Fear is an emotion that is going to come. It may not be real or grounded in anything, but it's going to come. By allowing that to paralyze us, and we talked about the journey, by allowing us to paralyze us, we're not continuing that journey to where we're supposed to be or who the person we're supposed to be. And so the idea is keep going, accept it, right? Accept it and keep going and don't let that hold you back. because another thing, because I think a really powerful message is when you get to the other side of fear. Because when you get to the other side of fear, that's where all the greatness lies. And you then and you now have a great story, not only for yourself, but you can share with others how you overcame your fears and it didn't hurt you, if you will.
Yeah, and there's great excitement in those overcomings, right? If I
Mm-hmm.
remember, I don't know why I never really think about that, but when I was a young child, I loved to jump from the 3 meter, 5 meter, whatever meter down into the water, right? But
Okay.
that standing on top of this tower and looking down into the water and you're
Yep.
really afraid
Yeah.
is kind of like really massive excitement. And then you jump and it's just like, oh, I want that feeling again, you know? So there is some kind of gratification in overcoming the fear because we know, well, we jumped, we made that leap, and we tried something, we overcame it consciously, and maybe it's coming back, but at least I did it, you know.
So funny you gave that the picture of the water, jumping in the water. I remember as a young boy, and I went to this waterfall. It was a water park, if you will, and they had this new slide that was a mile long, and you in the
Hmm.
water, and you basically you lie down and slide all the way down. It was a mile long, and I remember watching people go up this slide, up this. You got to climb up the stairs, and I'm going to go do this. And Martin, I got to the top, I turned right back. And and it's funny, and I laugh because to this day I've always said, you know what? One day I'm gonna do that water slide, right? So it's gonna come one day. One day it'll happen. One day it'll happen. I promise you. um, I'd love to know about how you got into the work, how you got into your work, and when I read your bio, there's all sorts. You've got this background, very diverse, and all different things that you're involved with, and being a chef, and I mean, you mentioned a vegan. I should go through the list, but there's so many things on that in terms of what you do, and it just seems like you're wearing lots of different hats, right? How did you
I
get
do,
into the
yeah.
work you do?
You know, the funny thing is that I've always, not always, but I've done this work, this shamanic work for the since I, let's say, probably 2010.
Okay.
So I was an au pair in the United States in 2007 and 8, and I came back and started studying in Cologne sports economy. And shortly after that, I stumbled into the shamanic journey workshop. And so this has been kind of like on the side happening because it was something that really helped me, where I felt for the first time this is something where I'm actually able to understand myself, but also be more at peace, or at least not as reactive. You know, I'm not as exposed to external events as I was before. And so I kept on doing this, and all the time while I was studying, I was doing a lot of music. When I was done studying, I said, okay, 5 years of my time I'm investing as a musician. So I did everything I could to make it as a musician. And all those jobs that I wrote down in this description were minimum wage jobs, many of them, not all of them, because they allowed me to be flexible with my time. I needed the weekends off, or needed to be able
Right.
to schedule a gig and drop out of whatever I was doing. So that was the reason why I have so many different things that I did. And in addition to that, I'm really interested in nonprofit work.
Mm.
So all the time I was into creating nonprofit music festivals, or Future of Food convention online, where we talk about how we need to change our habits, how we can grow food so that the planet is really regenerating, all these things. So there's these different strains that come together. And then when I reestablished my coaching practice, I
Hmm.
realized, well, my greatest expertise is not in what I was educated in, sports economy or sports psychology, but is actually in those shamanic teachings that I received, and the supervision that I had. So that is when I realized, okay, let's do this way.
Right. And there you go. You're off into something else.
Yeah.
It's got to be fun in terms of which hat you're wearing what day, right? Like today I'll do this versus tomorrow I'll do that, right?
It is, and in a way, this coaching practice and business really allows me to tap into so many of these skills, and I haven't even begun to really start producing music, meditation music, and doing all the like that creative video and audio stuff that I have the capacity for, because I'm really just in a different part of that business right now. But it's there, and it's really so nice that some people just, I take it for granted sometimes that I can do these things. And when I really just released a short video with the music in the background that I had written and composed, and somebody was, this is so amazing, I could never do that. And I was, this is nothing, right? So it is beautiful to be able to bring this, a lot of it, into this practice.
Got you. I'd love to talk, if you expand further on the shamanic journey that you referenced, and you started with a workshop and it led to a journey of your own, if you will.
Yeah.
I wonder if you sort of could talk about that. And for those, I mean, there are people who will be listening that aren't really familiar or understand. I'd really appreciate if you could enlighten them a bit more to understand what we're talking about here.
Absolutely, and thank you for asking. There we are again. I take I take this so for granted, because I've been doing it for such a long time. So, shamanic journeys, I would say the biggest differentiation, or the biggest difference, is that the well-known journeys that we can do are psychotropic induced journeys, where we have ayahuasca or San Pedro or some kind of plant medicine that people take, and then there's a shaman and takes these people through these experience. But the tradition in which I was taught is basically only with sound. So I have a drum, and people go on these inner discovery journeys. It's kind of like a meditation. It's just a little different. Images come up, sensations come up, and I get to have a conversation with my subconscious, with my higher self, depending on where the journey goes. And so the most important part of these journeys is we need an intention. It is just like, if I don't have an intention, then the journey might be all over the place. And it's just like waking up. What was that dream about? I usually don't go to bed with an intention. So I dream about all around, like, I don't know, whatever it is. So with that intention, these journeys help us to understand, gain clarity, gain some kind of perspective on what it is we are bringing into this life, into this reality right now. So that is, I hope, and you can please feel free to ask questions. Was that making enough sense for someone who has never heard about it?
So I think so. Context is always big for people, so they might compare it to sort of what they understand or what they know. Let's say, so let's take
absolutely.
their own, whether their Christianity, whatever their faith is. If they were to do a comparison between their own faith and the shamanic journeys, what would they be able to see in that?
That's a good question. So I would say that, depending on the kind of relationship I have with Jesus Christ, it would be possible that some people they do prayers, or they ask for guidance, and they have a conversation with Jesus or something. And then they get some kind of information on what helps them cope, find realization about themselves, and be in love, basically, right? So I would say that and it is an abstract comparison, but it is some kind of guidance that helps us to live more purposefully, right? And it's just a different, let's say, language. We're speaking in an English language, and what I'm doing, and Christianity is that English language, and maybe the shamanic journey is just a different language. And if we learn that language, we are able to express ourselves and learn from those people, or from this context.
Right. I think there's some familiar for both, which are, regardless of where you're at. I would say maybe and maybe you can let me know what you think, but there's some core sort of foundational principles that are similar, if not the same in some instances. Is that
to what?
So if I'm talking about, say, Christianity and the shamanic journeys as an example, there's some core similarities.
I would say if we see that as a tree, then and it's different branches on a tree, then it is just leading us to the roots of this tree, which is the same, pretty much, I
Gotcha.
would say, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
my path on this shamanic or my shamanic path has really helped me to come back to my Christian and Catholic roots. Catholic only because this is where I was raised,
Right.
and to really see that there is great wisdom in many parts of the Bible that are often referenced by spiritual teachers who are not necessarily Christian per se,
Mhm.
right? So, and it's the same to any other major religious movements. I feel like if we are able to see or read between the lines, and
Mhm.
that is what I learned through that shamanic path, and other people learn it through different ways, then we are all coming to the same conclusion.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like you get a map, right? We all got our own individual map, but that destination is it's the exact same place. And again, we had a conversation earlier about the journey, right? We are
Yeah.
on the journey. I think the most significant thing in that to understand and recognize is that we're all on our own individual journey. Right.
Yeah.
So we're the route and path that you take there, that was predetermined and destined for you, not necessarily what I had to go down, right? But we could end up at the same place, right? But just different way of getting there, I guess is the way of saying it.
Yeah, and I think that is what makes it so beautiful, right? That we meet these beings that if we are able to refrain from comparing our journeys and or
Mm,
what is right and what is wrong, if we meet on this trail, or maybe there's an intersection where we meet for a lunch break or something, and you're going on your path and I'm
yep.
going on mine, but we can meet at this place and have a conversation about, wow, my journey, man, you should have seen you should
Yeah,
have seen
yep, yep.
those places, and the same says the other person. So I think the beauty comes in through that uniqueness of each person's own path, and then there's these clusters of people that feel drawn to each other, but kind of like a tribe or something, where it just feels like we like to hang out together and we walk on this journey for a while. I love the image of the Appalachian Trail. I don't know if you've ever seen anything about those major
No.
trails in the US, but it's these long distance trails,
Okay.
and a couple of thousand miles, I think 2,300 miles. And
Okay.
on the trail, when you start out on the trail, you're either with a partner or someone else or alone. And then you meet people and you walk for a while together and you spend time and you get to know each other. And then the pace, you find out my pace is different than the other person's pace. And then you move on or you stay back.
Right.
And so I think that's a beautiful metaphor for life, that we come, people go, but the relationships are always beautiful when we are just inviting that moment to be whatever it is.
The part I love, and again, I think that's another great image of the part I love, and you touched on earlier, is that when we come together and sort of share one another as well. This is the path I took. Is like the learning opportunities with that are immense, and
Yeah.
I'm so, Martin, I'm so big on sharing. I think it's so critical. What that does, when I have the opportunity for me to tell the story of Audley Stevenson and how I got to the where I got to, that empowers me, but it also empowers the listener, inspires the listener to say, hey, you know what? I was in the exact same place as he was, and look what he did, and now he's there. And so that will, motivate me to do the same. And so I'm big on sharing just because of that, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is good. This is good, Martin. I've really appreciated this chat. It's very enlightening, and again, I'm just big on perspectives overall, because different perspectives can help feed into who we are, and if we are looking to launch out and be the person we're meant to be, there's nothing wrong with garnering these perspectives. So I really appreciate you for being here and sharing yours.
Thank you for having me. As I mentioned before, it's been time flew by. It's really gone fast. So that's
Yeah.
always a sign for great inspiration, engagement, and fun. So thank you very much for that.
For our listeners who want to know more about you, now you'll be in Hawaii. You're not in Hawaii now. right? But
No.
that's one of the places that you'll end up. So for our listeners who want to learn more about you, what maybe you can greet them from Hawaii, maybe.
By the end of the year, I have a little bit of stuff to do, but
Good.
yes, and
Good.
I'm in Germany, but it doesn't matter really because I'm mostly working online. So that's
Gotcha.
the beauty of my shamanic journeys that I'm doing, that we can do it online, and it's a beautiful experience. The business site or the practice site is lighttrails.co. It's really easy. So we talked about journeys, so there's the trail,
There we
and
go. Love it.
yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. I really, Martin, again, I really, really appreciate you doing this. Thank you for being here, and congratulations on all the great work you're doing.
Thank you, Audley. Have a wonderful evening.
Take care. Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Martin for stopping by and being here and leaving us with some great nuggets of insight around that journey and path that we all have to take as we move through life. So again, Martin, thank you. You know, I really appreciated so much of Martin had to share with us today, but if there's just one thing I take from the chat that we just had, it would have to be this. While we may have dreams, goals, and aspirations that fuel our ambitions, it's equally vital to acknowledge and accept where we currently stand on this pathway to life. The art of acceptance, like a compass, helps guide us towards growth, self-discovery, and happiness. Let's explore the importance of accepting where we are on life's journey and how it can positively transform our perspective. Acceptance is not about settling or giving up on our dreams. Instead, it's about acknowledging your present circumstances, strengths, limitations, and the lessons life has taught you thus far. By accepting where you are on life's journey, you can understand that progress and growth start from a place within. One of the most significant barriers to personal contentment and growth is a tendency to compare ourselves to others. In a society obsessed with social media highlights, it becomes easy to fall into that trap of feeling inadequate or unsuccessful because of someone else's apparent achievements or milestones. However, when we accept where we are on our individual path, we free ourselves from futile comparisons. Embracing our story allows us to let go of the burden of comparison and focus instead on personal growth, self-compassion, and fulfillment. Unexpected challenges and disappointments, setbacks are inevitable. However, accepting these hurdles brings forth an opportunity for gratitude and joy. By accepting our circumstances, even the difficult ones, we cultivate gratitude for the lessons we learn, the strength we gain, and the mere existence of the present moment. Now, let's be clear. Acceptance is not complacency, but a catalyst for transformation and personal growth. By acknowledging where we are in life's journey, we gain clarity around the areas that necessitate change and improvement. Acceptance helps identify our strengths, allowing us to build on top of them while also highlighting areas where growth is required. Accepting where you are in life's journey is a powerful tool for personal growth and self-compassion and fulfillment. It liberates us from the chains of comparison, helps us cultivate gratitude amidst challenges, and serves as a catalyst for transformation. By embracing acceptance, we embark on an incredible journey of self-discovery, leading to a deeper understanding of who we are and an unwavering appreciation for the journey itself. So let's acknowledge where we stand, relinquish control of the unchangeable, and embrace the beauty of our unique, audacious path. We've sadly come to the end of another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast, and as always, I send my thanks and appreciation to all those lovers of audaciousness and our amazing listeners that continue to support this podcast. To all of you, I say thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.